Let me tell you about a man named Gerald. He was 72 years old, retired engineer, meticulous about everything, including his diet. After his wife passed, he made a decision. He was going to take his health seriously. He cut out red meat. He switched to whole grain bread. He started drinking a glass of orange juice every morning, took his fish oil, added a daily smoothie pack with what the internet told him were brain-boosting superfoods. His daughter called him the healthiest person she knew. 18 months later, Gerald's daughter called me. Her father was forgetting conversations they'd had the day before. He was losing his train of thought mid-sentence. His doctor had ordered a cognitive assessment. The results were troubling. Here is what broke my heart about Gerald's situation. He had done everything right by conventional wisdom. He had followed the advice. He had been disciplined and consistent. And the foods he believed were protecting his brain may have been quietly working against it, not because he was careless, because nobody told him the truth about how nutrition science changes after 70. My name is Dr. Franklin, and this channel exists for one reason: to tell you what the research actually says in plain language without the assumptions that most health advice makes about your age. Today, I'm walking you through 5 foods that are broadly considered healthy, foods that appear in senior nutrition guide, foods your doctor might even recommend, that after the age of 70 carry a hidden risk for memory and cognitive function that almost nobody's talking about. Stay with me through all 5, because number 1 is the food that appears in virtually every brain health article ever written. And the truth about what it does after 70 is something I wish more people knew before it was too late. One thing before we begin: I'm not telling you to strip your diet overnight. Nutrition changes should always be made gradually and ideally in conversation with your physician or a registered dietitian who understands aging physiology. What I'm giving you today is information, because you deserve to understand what is going into your body and why it matters. Drop a comment right now. Tell me, are you over 60? What does your typical breakfast look like? I read every comment, and your answer might help someone else watching today. All right. Food number 5, whole wheat bread and fortified grain products. This one lands differently for people who grew up being told to switch from white bread to whole wheat as one of the smartest health decisions they could make. And for a 45-year-old, that advice holds up reasonably well. But here is what changes after 70. The digestive system ages. Enzyme production slows. The gut lining becomes less efficient at separating beneficial compounds from problematic ones. And whole wheat bread, particularly the commercially produced fortified varieties that line grocery store shelves, contains 2 things that become increasingly significant for aging brain. The first is gluten, which in a subset of older adults triggers low-grade intestinal inflammation even without a diagnosed celiac condition. A 2021 study published in Nutrients found that non-celiac gluten sensitivity increases measurably with age and is associated with neuroinflammation, specifically inflammation in regions of the brain responsible for memory consolidation. The second issue is something almost nobody talks about in the context of bread: iron fortification. Commercially fortified grains add iron back into the product after processing. That sounds responsible. For older adults, it may not be. Unlike younger adults who use iron aggressively for blood cell production, adults over 70 often accumulate excess iron. And here is why that matters for your brain. Excess iron in aging brain tissue is directly linked to oxidative stress and the acceleration of amyloid plaque formation, the same toxic protein buildup associated with Alzheimer's disease. A review in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that iron accumulation in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex was among the strongest imaging predictors of cognitive decline. In adults over 68, Gerald ate 2 slices of fortified whole wheat toast every single morning. What to do instead? Choose genuinely whole grain options with short ingredient lists and no added iron. Fortification listed: sourdough bread, particularly long fermented varieties, has significantly reduced gluten content due to bacterial breakdown, and no added iron. Or consider switching your morning grain to oats, which carry a completely different nutrient and inflammation profile. Food number 4, fruit juice, including fresh squeezed orange juice. This one is deeply counterintuitive because juice feels like nature in a glass. No artificial colors, no preservatives, pure fruit. What could be more wholesome? Here's what juice actually delivers to a brain over 70: sugar, specifically fructose in concentrated amounts, stripped entirely of the fiber that would normally slow its absorption when you eat the whole fruit. When fructose hits your bloodstream rapidly, it drives a spike in blood glucose followed by a drop. In a younger metabolic system, that fluctuation is managed relatively efficiently. After 70, glucose regulation becomes less precise. Insulin sensitivity declines. And repeated blood sugar spikes followed by crashes create a metabolic environment in the brain that researchers now describe using a term that should stop every juice drinker in their tracks: type 3 diabetes. This is a term used in emerging neuroscience to describe insulin resistance that develops specifically in brain tissue. When neurons become resistant to insulin, they lose their ability to efficiently metabolize glucose for energy. And neurons that can't access energy begin to malfunction. Memory formation slows. Recall becomes inconsistent. Attention fragments. A landmark study from the University of California found that older adults who consumed 2 or more servings of juice daily showed measurably faster cognitive decline over a 5-year period compared to those who ate whole fruit instead. Even when total caloric intake was similar, Gerald had a large glass of orange juice every single morning. He thought he was protecting himself. If you are still with me and finding this useful, type the number 4 in the comments right now. It tells me you are watching, and it helps this information reach more people who need it. Food number 3, vegetable oils and products made with them. Here is one that will challenge something many of you have believed for decades. when saturated fat was declared the enemy of heart health in the latter half of the 20th century. Vegetable oils stepped in as the obvious solution. Canola oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, they became the default in every kitchen, every restaurant, every packaged food product on the market. The science behind that shift was never as solid as it was presented. And for aging brains specifically, the downstream effects of decades of vegetable oil consumption are now beginning to show up clearly in the research. Here is the core problem. Vegetable oils are extremely high in omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids. Your brain needs a balance of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids to function properly. The ideal ratio is somewhere between 1 and 4 to 1. The average American senior today consumes these fatty acids at a ratio closer to 20 to 1 in favor of omega-6. That imbalance drives chronic systemic inflammation, including neuroinflammation. And neuroinflammation is not background noise in the context of dementia. It is one of the primary drivers of it. A study in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry found that older adults with the highest dietary omega-6 to omega-3 ratios showed the greatest rates of hippocampal shrinkage over a 3-year observation period. The hippocampus, as I mentioned earlier, is your brain's primary memory filing center. There is a second layer to this problem. Most vegetable oils are chemically unstable at high temperatures. When you cook with them, they oxidize and produce compounds called aldehydes, toxic byproducts that have been detected in brain tissue of Alzheimer's patients in significantly higher concentrations than in age-matched controls. Gerald cooked everything in canola oil because he'd been told it was heart healthy. What to do instead? Shift toward cooking fats that are stable at heat. Extra virgin olive oil for low to medium heat cooking. Butter or ghee from grass-fed sources for higher heat. Avocado oil is a neutral high heat option. These fats carry anti-inflammatory profiles that are meaningfully better for aging brain tissue. Food number 2, artificially sweetened yogurt and low-fat dairy products. Here is where I want you to pay close attention because this category has some of the most genuinely surprising research behind it. Yogurt is almost universally recommended for older adults. Probiotics for gut health, calcium for bones, protein for muscle maintenance, and in its plain, full-fat form, those benefits are real. The problem is what commercial yogurt has become. Walk down the yogurt aisle of any grocery store and what you find is largely flavored, sweetened, low-fat products that have been engineered to taste like dessert while wearing the label of health food. 2 things in these products are particularly relevant to brain health after 70. First, artificial sweeteners, specifically aspartame, sucralose, and acesulfame potassium, which appear in virtually every reduced calorie or sugar-free yogurt variety. A 2022 study in the journal Cell examined the gut microbiome response to common artificial sweeteners and found that even moderate consumption significantly disrupted microbial balance in a way that increased intestinal permeability. You may know that concept as leaky gut. When the gut barrier becomes permeable, bacterial byproducts and inflammatory compounds enter the bloodstream. And here is what most people do not know. The gut and the brain are in constant two-way communication through what scientists call the gut-brain axis. Systemic inflammation originating in the gut reaches brain tissue, and a chronically inflamed brain is a brain that is aging faster than it should. Second problem, the removal of fat. Full-fat dairy contains something called conjugated linoleic acid, or CLA, along with fat-soluble vitamins including K2, which plays a direct role in preventing calcium accumulation in arterial walls and brain tissue. When manufacturers remove the fat to create low-fat products, these compounds go with it. A 2020 analysis in the European Journal of Nutrition found that older adults who consumed full-fat dairy showed better preservation of white matter integrity in the brain compared to those who consumed primarily low-fat dairy alternatives. White matter is the connective tissue of your brain. It is what allows different regions to communicate efficiently. Gerald ate flavored low-fat yogurt every morning with his toast and his orange juice. He believed he was giving his brain exactly what it needed. What to do instead? Switch to plain full-fat Greek yogurt with no added sweeteners. Add your own flavor with a small amount of fresh berries or a drizzle of raw honey. The probiotic benefit is preserved. The inflammatory compounds are eliminated, and your brain gets the fat-soluble nutrients it was being quietly denied. Food number 1, farmed salmon and processed fish oil supplement. I told you at the beginning that number 1 would surprise you, because this is the food that appears in virtually every brain health article, every senior nutrition guide, every anti-dementia dietary recommendation ever published. Eat more fish. Take your omega-3s. Protect your brain with fatty acids. And in principle, that advice is correct. The problem is the source. And after 70, the source matters more than almost anyone realizes. Farmed salmon, which represents the overwhelming majority of salmon sold in American grocery stores and restaurants, is raised in conditions that fundamentally alter its nutritional profile compared to wild-caught fish. Farmed salmon are fed a diet of processed pellets containing soy, corn derivatives, and synthetic additives. They are raised in densely packed aquatic environments that require routine antibiotic use, and their fatty acid profile, the very thing that makes salmon worth eating, is dramatically different from wild salmon. A 2021 analysis published in Environmental Research tested farmed versus wild salmon for both nutrient content and contaminant levels. Farmed salmon contained significantly higher concentrations of persistent organic pollutants, including PCBs and dioxins, which are lipophilic compounds. Lipophilic means they are attracted to fat, and your brain, being nearly 60% fat, is exactly where these compounds accumulate. PCB accumulation in brain tissue has been directly linked in multiple studies to accelerated cognitive decline and increased Alzheimer's pathology. Meanwhile, the omega-3 content of farmed salmon, while present, is delivered alongside an elevated omega-6 burden from the grain-based feed, partially offsetting the anti-inflammatory benefit you were counting on. Now, processed fish oil supplements carry a separate but related problem. Most commercial fish oil capsules oxidize rapidly after the bottle is opened. Oxidized fish oil does not deliver the cognitive benefit of fresh omega-3s. It delivers rancid fat, which generates oxidative stress in the very tissue you are trying to protect. A 2016 study in Scientific Reports found that a significant percentage of commercial fish oil supplements on the market contained oxidation levels far exceeding international safety recommendations. Gerald took 2 fish oil capsules every morning from a large bottle. He kept on his kitchen counter, opened and closed daily, exposed to air and light. He thought he was doing something powerful for his brain. Here's what I want you to hear clearly. The goal of eating fish for brain health is correct. The execution is what needs updating after 70. What to do instead? Choose wild-caught Alaskan salmon, sardines, or mackerel whenever possible. These are lower on the food chain, which means lower contaminant accumulation, and their omega-3 profiles are genuine. If you supplement with fish oil, store it in the refrigerator, use small bottles that you finish within 30 days of opening, and choose brands that publish third-party oxidation testing. Alternatively, algae-based omega-3 supplements bypass the fish entirely and deliver DHA and EPA directly from the original marine source with no contamination risk. Now, here is what ties all 5 of these foods together, and it is the same pattern we saw with medications in a previous video. None of these foods is dramatically dangerous in isolation. A slice of fortified bread is not going to destroy your memory. A glass of orange juice is not going to cause dementia. But Gerald was not eating one of these foods. He was eating all 5 every single day consistently for 18 months while believing he was protecting himself. The cumulative inflammatory burden, the chronic blood sugar dysregulation, the oxidative stress, the gut-brain disruption, these effects compound. They layer on top of each other. And the result is a pattern of subtle, creeping cognitive change that gets attributed to normal aging because nobody ever connects the dots between the breakfast, table, and the brain scan. The practical framework. Before I let you go, here is what I want you to take into your kitchen this week. Not a complete overhaul. Just 5 targeted swaps. Swap 1. Replace fortified commercial bread with long fermented sourdough or plain oats. Swap 2. Replace fruit juice with the whole fruit. All the vitamins, none of the blood sugar spikes. Swap 3. Replace vegetable oils with extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, or grass-fed butter depending on your cooking method. Swap 4. Replace flavored low-fat yogurt with plain full-fat Greek yogurt. Control your own sweetness with real food. Swap 5. Replace farmed salmon or oxidized fish oil with wild-caught sardines or mackerel, or switch to an algae-based omega-3 supplement stored properly in your refrigerator. These are not radical changes. They are informed ones, and they are built on what the research actually shows about how aging physiology responds to food, not on guidelines written for a 50-year-old body. Gerald made these changes, slowly, over about 3 months, with guidance. His daughter called me again 6 months after that first conversation. She said her father felt sharper. He was finishing his sentences. He was present in conversations again. I cannot promise you Gerald's outcome. I cannot tell you that food alone will reverse cognitive decline. What I can tell you is that an aging brain deserves the same evidence-based attention we give to aging hearts and aging bones. And right now, most of that attention is missing from the conversation. If this video gave you something new to think about, please subscribe. I make videos like this every week, evidence-based, honest, and built specifically for adults over 60 who deserve real information. And leave a comment below. Which of these 5 foods surprised you the most? Your answer tells me what to cover next, and it might be exactly the conversation someone else needed to see before their next trip to the grocery store. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.